The damaged human ship Discovery limped through space toward the massive station floating in the void. Commander Elena Vasquez pressed her face against the small window and stared at Nexus Prime. The galactic capital looked like someone had built a city inside a crystal bubble the size of a moon. Thousands of alien ships moved around it like insects around a bright light. "First time seeing the big station?" asked her pilot, Lieutenant Rodriguez. His hands moved over controls that looked ancient compared to what they could see outside. "Yes," Elena said. "Hard to believe this place has been here for 10,000 years. Rodriguez laughed. "Wait until you meet the people who built it. They make 10,000 years sound like last week." The Discovery had been exploring the outer edge of known space when its engines failed. The rescue ship that found them belonged to something called the Galactic Confederation. Elena still remembered the alien captain's face when he saw their ship. The creature looked like a tall blue human with 4 arms and silver eyes. He had stared at their metal walls and simple computers like he was looking at cave paintings. "You build ships from iron?" the alien had asked through his translator device. "And you use electricity for computing? How? Creative." Now Elena was flying toward the center of galactic civilization as Earth's first ambassador. She carried papers that made her the official voice of humanity. The weight of that responsibility sat heavy on her shoulders. The alien traffic control gave them permission to dock at Landing Bay 847. Elena noticed there were over 2,000 landing bays. As they flew closer, she saw ships that looked like living creatures, others that seemed to be made of pure light, and some that hurt her eyes to look at directly. "Remember the briefing," said Ambassador Chen from the seat behind her. The old man had been Earth's most successful diplomat for 30 years. His hair was completely white now, and his face was covered with lines from decades of difficult negotiations. "We are new here. We listen more than we talk. We learn before we act." Elena nodded. She had read Chen's reports about the Galactic Confederation. It contained over 400 different alien species. Some had been part of it for thousands of years. Others were so advanced they no longer had physical bodies. The government was run by something called the Apex Council, beings of pure energy who had given up their physical forms long ago. The Discovery landed with a soft bump. Elena checked her translation device one more time. It was a gift from their alien rescuers, programmed with over 600 languages. As the airlock opened, she took a deep breath and stepped into her future. The landing bay was huge. The ceiling was so far above them it disappeared into shadows. Aliens of every shape and size moved around the bay. Elena saw creatures that walked on 6 legs, others that floated in the air, and some that looked like walking trees. The sound of hundreds of different voices speaking hundreds of different languages filled the air. A delegation was waiting for them. The leader was a Zephyrian, one of the blue 4-armed aliens who had found them. His name was Kavtor, and he was their official guide. "Welcome to Nexus Prime," Kavtor said. His voice came through the translator with a slight delay. "We are pleased to meet the newest species to join our community." Elena noticed how he said newest species instead of new members. She filed that detail away for later. They were taken to a transport that moved without wheels or engines. It simply floated through the station's corridors. Elena watched through the windows as they passed markets, where aliens sold things she could not identify, schools where young aliens learned together, and parks where children from dozens of species played games she did not understand. "Your species lives very short lives," said Kavtor as they traveled. "How do you accomplish anything meaningful in such a brief time?" "We work together," Elena replied. "Each generation builds on what the previous one accomplished." Kavtor's silver eyes blinked slowly. "Interesting. Most species we encounter have already developed life extension technology before they achieve space travel. You chose to explore the stars while still dying of old age. Very unusual." Elena felt like she was being studied rather than welcomed. They were brought to a meeting room where representatives from several alien species waited. Elena recognized a few from her briefing materials. The Vorthan representative looked like a large crystal sculpture that pulsed with internal light. The Kolari delegate was actually 5 smaller creatures that moved and spoke as one mind. There were others she had never seen before. "Humans," said the Vorthan in a voice like wind chimes, "we have examined your technology. Very primitive, but functional. Like tools made by children." Elena kept her expression calm. "We find that simple solutions often work better than complex ones." "Simple?" "Yes," agreed the Kolari group mind. "You think as individuals, instead of collective consciousness. This limits your potential. But it is not unusual for young species." Ambassador Chen spoke for the first time. "We appreciate your welcome. We hope to learn much from your advanced civilizations." The meeting continued for 2 hours. Elena listened as the aliens explained how the Confederation worked. New species were given a small territory in the outer regions. They could trade basic resources with other members. If they proved themselves over several thousand years, they might be invited to join the inner systems. "Several thousand years?" Elena asked. "The Apex Council moves slowly," explained Kavtor. "They think in terms of geological time. To them, 1,000 years is like a day to you." After the meeting, Elena and Chen were given quarters in the diplomatic section. The rooms were comfortable but clearly designed for visitors who were not expected to stay long. "What do you think?" Elena asked Chen, as they sat in his room, reviewing the day's events. Chen was reading something on his tablet. "I think they are very polite," he said. "And very dismissive. They see us as children with interesting toys. Should we be concerned about that?" Chen looked up from his tablet. His eyes were serious. "Elena, I have been reading their historical records. Do you know what I find interesting?" Elena waited. "Every few thousand years, entire species disappear from the records. Advanced civilizations that contributed to galactic society for millennia suddenly stop being mentioned. When I asked about it, they said it was natural evolution. Species that ascend to higher planes of existence. That sounds normal for advanced species, doesn't it?" Chen shook his head slowly. "I have spent my life reading between the lines of diplomatic language. And what I am reading here frightens me." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you want to do?" "I want to write a report," Chen said. "I want to ask questions. I want to dig deeper into these records. And if they do not like our questions?" Chen smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "Then we will know we were right to ask them." Elena looked out the window at the vast station around them. Millions of aliens lived here in peace and prosperity. The technology she had seen was beyond anything Earth could imagine, but Chen's words echoed in her mind. Where had all those advanced species gone? And why did no one seem to remember them? She had a feeling that their mission to establish diplomatic relations had just become something much more important and much more dangerous. "Doctor." Sarah Kim knelt in the red dust of the dead world and brushed debris away from the stone carving. The symbols looked familiar, but she could not place them. Around her, the ruins stretched to the horizon under an orange sky. This planet had once been home to millions of people. Now it was empty except for the wind. "Find anything interesting?" asked Corporal Hayes, her security escort. The young Marine was sweating inside his environmental suit, despite the cold air. "Maybe," Sarah said. She took pictures of the symbols with her scanner. "These markings are similar to ones I found on Kepler 442b last month, and on Ross 128b before that." She had been studying dead worlds in the Outer Rim for 6 months. The Galactic Confederation had given humanity permission to explore empty systems that other species ignored. They called it archaeological research. The aliens seemed amused that humans wanted to dig through old ruins instead of focusing on profitable trade routes. Sarah's real job was more important than they knew. Ambassador Chen had asked her to investigate the missing civilizations he had found mentioned in galactic records. Every dead world told the same story. Advanced species that had contributed to galactic knowledge for thousands of years, then suddenly vanished without explanation. Her communicator buzzed. "Dr. Kim, this is Captain Torres on the Times Endurance Asterisk. We are ready for pickup." "Coming," Sarah replied. She took one last look at the carved symbols and made a note in her field journal. The Yathara civilization had built hyperspace communication networks that the galaxy still used today. Their technology was integrated into every major system across hundreds of worlds. But the Yathara themselves had disappeared 3,000 years ago, supposedly ascending to a higher dimension. Sarah did not believe in convenient ascensions. The shuttle ride back to the Time's endurance times gave her time to think. Captain Marcus Torres had been exploring dead systems for 3 months now. His ship was one of 12 human vessels given permission to operate in the Outer Rim. The aliens thought human ships were primitive, built from simple metals and powered by crude fusion reactors. They were right about the materials. Human ships were built like tanks, designed to survive anything space could throw at them. What the aliens did not understand was why humanity built them that way. They assumed it was because humans lacked better technology. "How did the survey go?" Torres asked when Sarah reached the bridge. The captain was a tall man with graying hair and calm eyes. He had commanded survey ships for 15 years, first around Earth and now among the stars. "The same pattern," Sarah reported. "Advanced civilization, major technological contributions, then sudden disappearance. No signs of war, disease, or natural disaster. They just left." Torres nodded grimly. "We found something today that might interest you." "Show her, Lieutenant Park." Lieutenant Park worked at the sensor station. She was young and brilliant, one of Earth's best technical analysts. "We detected an energy signature in the Vega 7 system," she said. "It is not on any galactic charts." "What kind of signature?" Sarah asked. "Artificial. Definitely a constructed object, but it is not broadcasting any identification signals. The computer estimates it is very large." Torres stood up from his command chair. "We are going to investigate. I want you there when we find out what it is." The journey to Vega 7 took 18 hours. Sarah spent the time reviewing her findings from the dead worlds. The pattern was becoming clearer. Every vanished species had developed some kind of breakthrough technology shortly before they disappeared. Faster-than-light communication, dimensional fold drives, quantum consciousness transfer, innovations that advanced galactic civilization. "Coming up on the target," announced Lieutenant Park. Sarah joined Torres and his crew on the bridge. The main screen showed empty space filled with distant stars. Then the Time's, Endurance's time sensors locked onto something, and the view changed. The ship was massive. It stretched for kilometers in every direction, built from materials that seemed to absorb light. The design was unlike anything in galactic databases. Long curves and flowing lines that suggested organic growth rather than mechanical construction. "Life signs?" Torres asked. "None," Park replied. "But there are still power readings from some sections. Very faint." "Take us closer," Torres ordered. As they approached, Sarah could see details on the alien vessel's hull. It was covered with the same kind of symbols she had been finding on dead worlds. But these symbols were different. They seemed to move and change when she was not looking directly at them. "Captain," Park said suddenly, "I am reading an airlock that matches our docking systems." Torres raised an eyebrow. "Human-compatible airlocks on an alien ship that predates human spaceflight? It appears so, sir." Sarah felt excitement mixing with fear in her stomach. "We need to board that ship." 2 hours later, Sarah walked through corridors that felt designed for human proportions. The walls glowed with soft light that activated when they approached. The ship was old. She could feel age in every surface, but it had been built to last. Torres and 2 Marines accompanied her, all wearing full environmental suits. The ship's atmosphere was breathable, but they were taking no chances. "These symbols," Sarah said, running her gloved hand over carvings on the wall. "They are the same ones I've been finding on dead worlds, but more complete. Like a full language, instead of fragments." They found what appeared to be a control room. Banks of dark screens surrounded a central chair that looked disturbingly human-sized. When Torres approached the chair, lights began to activate throughout the room. "Motion sensors," he said, "still working after who knows how many years." Sarah studied the writing on the walls. Slowly, patterns began to emerge. "I think this is a historical record," she said. "Look at this sequence. It shows the development of civilizations across time." One of the screens flickered to life, displaying images that made Sarah's blood run cold. She saw species she recognized from galactic records: the Yathara, the Kendari, the Voss Collective. But in these images, they were not ascending to higher planes of existence. They were being consumed. The images showed vast entities of pure energy surrounding entire star systems. Civilizations, struggling and failing to resist. Populations disappearing as their life force was drained away. And at the center of it all, beings that Sarah recognized from diplomatic files. The Apex Council. "Captain," she whispered, "we need to copy all of this data. Everything." Torres was already connecting portable drives to the alien systems. The crew of this ship. Who were they? Sarah found more symbols near what appeared to be a star chart. They called themselves the Architects. According to this, they discovered the truth about the galactic harvest cycle. They tried to warn other species. What happened to them? Sarah continued reading. The symbols told a story of desperate escape, of a civilization that chose exile over extinction. They left, she said. They built ships like this one, and fled to dark space between galaxies. This must be one of their reconnaissance vessels. Coming back to monitor the harvest cycles, Torres finished downloading the data. How long ago? Based on stellar positions in their charts. About 10,000 years ago. The two men looked at each other. 10,000 years was when the current Galactic Confederation had been founded, when the Apex Council had established their rule. "Dr. Kim," Torres said carefully, "are you saying the Galactic Confederation is not what it appears to be?" Sarah looked at the images still playing on the alien screens. Civilizations rising and falling in endless cycles, the same pattern repeating over millions of years. "I am saying we need to get this information to Earth immediately." The journey back to human space took 4 days. Sarah spent the time analyzing the architect data. The picture it painted was horrifying. The galaxy was not a peaceful confederation of equals. It was a carefully managed farm where civilizations were allowed to grow until they became useful, then harvested for their life energy and technological achievements. Humanity had arrived just as the current harvest cycle was nearing completion. When they reached Earth's communication relays, Torres sent an encrypted message to Ambassador Chen on Nexus Prime. The reply came back 6 hours later. Data received and analyzed. Attempting to present findings to Galactic Science Consortium. Recommend continued investigation, but maintain operational security. Will advise of political response. 3 days later, Chen's next message was more troubling. Scientific report rejected as anthropomorphic pattern seeking, typical of primitive species. Galactic authorities amused by human tendency to see conspiracies in natural processes. Investigation officially classified as cultural anthropology rather than threat assessment. Continuing diplomatic efforts. Sarah stared at the message on her screen. The evidence was overwhelming. The architect records showed harvest cycles going back millions of years. Hundreds of civilizations consumed by entities that presented themselves as benevolent guides. And the galaxy's response was to pat humanity on the head and tell them they were imagining things. "What do we do now?" Torres asked. Sarah looked at the star charts, showing dead worlds scattered across the outer rim. Each one represented millions of lives lost to the harvest. "We keep investigating. We find more evidence. And we hope someone listens before it is too late." But deep in her heart, she suspected that time was running out. The signs were all there for anyone willing to see them. The question was whether humanity could convince the galaxy to look before the harvest began again, and whether they could figure out how to fight beings of pure energy who had been feeding on civilizations since before Earth's sun was born. Captain Torres floated in the darkness between stars, staring at readings that made no sense. The times, endurance times, had been following energy traces from the architect ship for 2 weeks. The trail led them far from any mapped system, into a region of space that appeared empty on every galactic chart. "Sensors are picking up something big," reported Lieutenant Park. 2,000 kilometers ahead. "It is not showing on visual." "Put it on screen," Torres ordered. The main display showed nothing but stars. Then the computer enhanced the image, highlighting temperature differences and gravitational distortions. Slowly, a shape emerged from the void. It was enormous, larger than any space station or ship in galactic records. "What is that thing?" whispered Dr. Kim from her position at the science station. The object was roughly cylindrical, stretching for dozens of kilometers. Its surface was smooth and dark, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Strange patterns moved across its hull like living tattoos. Life signs, Torres asked. Park checked her instruments. Unclear. The readings are strange. There is energy movement inside, but not like anything in our databases. Torres made a decision. Take us closer. Full passive sensors. Do not transmit anything. As they approached, details became visible on the object's surface. It was covered with the same flowing symbols they had found on the architect ship. But these were larger and more complex. Some of them glowed with faint internal light. "Captain," said Dr. Kim, her voice tight with excitement and fear. "I think this is an architect-based ship. One of their deep space installations." The Endurance Times drifted closer, staying in the shadow of space debris to avoid detection. Torres could see docking ports and airlocks designed for ships like the one they had found. This was definitely architect technology. There, Park pointed to a section of the hull. That airlock appears to be active, and it is sending out a weak signal. What kind of signal? It is broadcasting in Earth Standard English. Torres felt ice form in his stomach. That is impossible. This ship has been here for thousands of years. The message is repeating, Park continued. It says, "Human vessel, you are expected. Docking Bay 7 is prepared for your arrival." Torres looked at his crew. They had come this far following ancient clues. Turning back now meant abandoning the only lead they had about the galaxy's true nature. "Take us in," he decided. Docking Bay 7 was enormous, large enough to hold a dozen ships the size of the Times Endurance Asterisk. As soon as they were inside, the bay sealed itself and filled with breathable atmosphere. Lights activated in sequences that led toward an inner airlock. Torres selected Dr. Kim and 2 Marines for the boarding party. They found corridors that were clearly designed for human proportions, lit by panels that responded to their presence. The ship felt alive, but not in a threatening way, more like it was waking up after a long sleep. They followed the lighted path through sections that seemed to stretch forever. Finally, they arrived at a vast chamber filled with displays showing star charts, energy readings, and what looked like population statistics for hundreds of worlds. At the center of the chamber sat a figure in an environmental suit. Torres approached carefully, his hand near his sidearm. The figure was definitely human-sized and human-shaped. When they got closer, they could see a face through the helmet's visor. It was human. The man appeared to be in his 50s, with graying hair and tired eyes. He looked up as they approached and smiled sadly. "Welcome," he said in perfect English. "I am Director Harrison of the Architect Monitoring Station. I have been waiting for you to arrive." "That is impossible," Dr. Kim said. "This installation is thousands of years old." Harrison stood up slowly, his movements careful in the artificial gravity. "Dr. Kim, Captain Torres." "Yes, I know who you are. We have been watching your investigation. Time works differently here, in the spaces between galaxies. I have been monitoring the harvest cycles for what feels like decades to me, but measures as millennia in normal space." Torres kept his weapon ready. "Who are you really?" "I am human," Harrison said simply. "Born on Earth in 2157. I joined the Architect refugee fleet when humanity made first contact with them." "First contact?" Dr. Kim stepped forward. "There are no records of previous alien contact." Harrison activated one of the displays. It showed Earth as it appeared from space. But the continents were slightly different. "This is Earth, as it was during my time. Your Earth, but not your timeline." The display changed, showing a sequence of images. Earth developing space travel. First contact with a species that looked remarkably like the Architects. Joint exploration missions. Growing friendship between humans and the ancient refugees. The Architects found Earth during their exile, Harrison explained. They had been fleeing the Apex Council for thousands of years, searching for species that might help them fight back. They chose humanity as partners. What happened? Torres asked. The display showed darker images. Ships fleeing a burning Earth. Massive energy entities surrounding the solar system. The Council discovered our alliance. They moved up their harvest schedule and consumed Earth's civilization. The architects saved who they could. Architects. The architects, Dr. Kim stared at the images. But Earth exists. Humanity survived. This Earth, Harrison said. This timeline. The Council's harvest creates temporal disruptions. When they consume a civilization's life energy, they sometimes create parallel realities where events unfold differently. Your Earth developed differently because of those quantum echoes. Torres tried to process what he was hearing. You are saying we are living in some kind of alternate timeline? More than that, Harrison said grimly. You are living in their testing ground. The Council noticed that some harvested species produced stronger life energy if they developed under specific stress conditions. They began creating multiple timeline variations to see which produced the best results. The display now showed star charts marking hundreds of worlds. Every species in the current Galactic Confederation exists in multiple timelines. The Council harvests the strongest versions and allows the others to continue developing. Humanity just happened to develop in a timeline that caught their attention. Dr. Kim was scanning the data streaming across the displays. These population figures, they are current statistics for Confederate worlds. The harvest is beginning, Harrison confirmed. The signs are all there. The Council has been preparing for months. They will start with the species that have developed the most useful technologies, then work their way through the rest. How long do we have? Torres asked. Based on previous cycles, 6 months before they begin active harvesting. Maybe less, if they sense resistance. And, Torres looked at the massive displays showing thousands of worlds, billions of lives completely unaware of what was coming. How do we stop them? Harrison laughed, but there was no humor in it. Captain, the architects have been trying to stop them for millions of years. The Council consists of beings of pure energy who have consumed thousands of civilizations. They have power beyond imagination. There has to be something we can do. Perhaps. Harrison activated another display, this one showing technical specifications for weapons and shields. The architects learned to fight them, but never successfully. However, they did discover that certain types of matter and energy can disrupt the Council's feeding process. Dr. Kim studied the technical data. These energy frequencies, they are similar to what human fusion reactors produce. Not similar, Harrison corrected. Identical. Humanity's technological development was guided to produce exactly these frequencies. The architects have been preparing for this moment through your entire species' development. Torres felt a chill run down his spine. You are saying humanity was designed to fight them? Trained, prepared. Given the tools you would need, integrated into technology you would naturally develop. The architects learned from every failed resistance. They spent thousands of years preparing the perfect weapon. Us, Dr. Kim whispered. Not just you, Harrison said. Humanity, as it exists across multiple timelines. The Council thinks they are managing multiple test populations. They do not realize the architects have been coordinating between those timelines. Torres looked at the displays showing dozens of human civilizations across parallel realities. All developing similar technology. All approaching the same point in history. What happens next? He asked. Harrison began downloading data to portable storage devices. You take this information back to your Earth. You convince your leaders to prepare, and you hope that when the harvest begins, humanity is ready to do what no other species has ever done, which is, fight back and win. Torres took the storage devices. Will the galaxy believe us? Harrison's expression was grim. Previous cycles suggest no. The Council's influence runs deep. They have been conditioning galactic civilization to dismiss warnings about harvest cycles. Most species will not realize what is happening until it is too late. Then humanity fights alone? Humanity fights first, Harrison corrected. If you can disrupt the harvest cycle, if you can show other species that the Council can be hurt, then maybe they will join you. but the opening battle will be yours to win or lose. Torres looked around the ancient chamber filled with the desperate preparations of a species that had fought this war for millions of years. How do we contact you again? You do not, Harrison said. Once you leave here, this station will move to a new location. The Council cannot know we still exist. But we will be watching. When the time comes, the Architect fleet will assist however we can. As they prepared to leave, Dr. Kim asked one final question. Why us? Why choose humanity? Harrison smiled for the first time since they had arrived. Because you are the only species we found that gets angry instead of afraid. When faced with impossible odds, and anger, Captain Torres, is exactly what this fight will require. The journey back to human space took 10 days. Torres sent encrypted messages ahead, preparing Earth Command for what they would need to know. The response was immediate and classified at the highest levels. When they finally transmitted the full Architect database to Earth, the response took 3 days. When it came, it was signed by the President of Earth herself. Data received and verified. Alert status raised to maximum. Recommend you maintain current operations but report all findings directly to Earth Command. Do not, repeat, do not share this information with galactic authorities. Torres understood. Humanity now knew the truth, but they were alone with that knowledge. The galaxy would not believe them until the harvest began. By then, it might be too late to save anyone. Admiral Jessica Park stood on the bridge of the hidden command station and watched displays that showed the truth about humanity's place in the galaxy. The station hung in empty space beyond Pluto's orbit, invisible to every scanner and sensor in known space. Around her, officers worked at consoles that controlled humanity's real fleet. Ma'am, reported Commander Williams. The Council has begun early harvest preparations. Zephyrian communication networks are being infiltrated. Vorthen crystal matrices show signs of energy drain. Undered for medical. Jessica nodded grimly. The moment they had prepared for across centuries was finally arriving. Signal status to all units. Operation Truth begins now. Across the galaxy, ships that had been registered as human merchant vessels received encrypted orders. In cargo holds and engine rooms, walls slid away to reveal weapon systems that no galactic database contained. Crews who had spent months playing the role of primitive traders dropped their disguises and prepared for war. The human ship Times, Prosperity Times, orbited the trade world of Kepler 442b, supposedly carrying agricultural supplies. Captain Chen, grandson of the old ambassador, watched his tactical display as Council energy signatures appeared throughout the system. All hands, this is the captain, he announced over the ship's communication system. Drop the disguise. Battle stations. The Times Prosperity's Times hull opened like a flower, revealing weapons batteries that had been hidden for months. Her engines, supposedly primitive fusion drives, activated systems that bent space around the ship. In seconds, she transformed from a slow cargo hauler into something that looked like it had been designed to fight gods. Similar transformations occurred across 40 star systems. Human merchants revealed themselves as warships. Human research stations activated planetary defense grids. Human communications satellites began broadcasting frequencies that disrupted energy-based life forms. On Nexus Prime, Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat in her office and watched the displays showing galactic communication networks failing one by one. The Apex Council was beginning their harvest, just as the Architect data had predicted. Her door chimed. "Come in," she called. Kavtor entered, his forearms gesturing frantically. "Ambassador, something is happening. Our networks are failing. There are energy readings throughout the galaxy that match no known phenomena." Elena stood up and walked to her window. Outside, she could see panic beginning to spread through the station's population. Ships were trying to leave, but their navigation systems were being disrupted by the same forces that were attacking communication networks. "It is not unknown," Elena said calmly. "It is the harvest." "Harvest?" Kavtor's silver eyes widened. "What harvest?" Elena turned to face him. The harvest that happens every few thousand years. The harvest that claimed the Yathara, the Kandari, the Voss Collective, and hundreds of other species. The harvest your Apex Council uses to feed on entire civilizations. Kavtor stepped backward. That is impossible. The Apex Council are our guides, our protectors. They ascended to pure energy to help us grow. They ascended to pure energy to feed on you, Elena corrected. And today, they begin feeding on this galactic cycle. The lights in Elena's office flickered as energy discharges swept through the station. Through the window, they could see massive forms materializing in space around Nexus Prime. The Apex Council had dropped their disguises, revealing themselves as vast entities of consuming energy. Elena activated her personal communicator. All human personnel. This is Ambassador Vasquez. Execute protocol. 7. Reveal and defend. Across Nexus Prime, humans who had been living as diplomats, researchers, and trade representatives activated hidden equipment. Dr. Kim emerged from her archaeological office wearing powered armor that had been disguised as a simple environmental suit. The human embassy building transformed, walls retracting to reveal shield generators and weapon systems. Elena, Kavtor whispered, staring at the transformation around him. What are you? Elena smiled sadly. We are the survivors, Kavtor. We are the ones who got away. In Earth's solar system, Admiral Park watched as the concealment grid that had hidden humanity's true nature for 3 centuries finally powered down. The massive defensive installations scattered throughout the asteroid belt became visible. The ships hidden in Jupiter's moons revealed themselves. The mining operations on Mars showed their true purpose as weapons manufacturing facilities. Admiral, reported her tactical officer. Council entities are approaching the outer system. Estimated time to Earth engagement, 6 hours. Signal the fleet, Jessica ordered. All ships, prepare to defend Earth. But the ships that emerged from hidden bases throughout the solar system were not the primitive vessels the galaxy had seen. These were warships built with technology that combined human engineering with knowledge gained from the architect archives. Their hulls were made from materials that resisted energy absorption. Their weapons fired frequencies specifically designed to disrupt beings of pure energy. As the Council entities approached Earth, they encountered resistance unlike anything they had faced in millions of years. Weapons that should not exist fired projectiles that actually damaged energy-based life forms. Shields that should have been useless against their feeding process held firm. On the bridge of his ship near Zephyrian space, Captain Chen watched his displays as the Council entity assigned to harvest that system struggled with something it had never experienced before. Its energy tendrils, designed to drain life force from entire populations, were meeting interference from human-designed disruption fields. Sir, reported his weapons officer. The entity is attempting to adapt to our defensive frequencies. Then we adapt too, Chen replied. Fire Pattern 7. The weapons that emerged from human ships were unlike anything in galactic databases. They fired concentrated bursts of the same energy frequencies that human fusion reactors produced, weaponized, and focused. The Council entity recoiled as the energy beams actually damaged its coherent structure. For the first time in galactic history, the harvesters were being hurt by their intended prey. Across the galaxy, other human ships engaged Council entities in battles that should have been impossible. Beings that had consumed civilizations for millions of years found themselves facing weapons they could not simply absorb, shields they could not drain, and tactics they did not understand. In the Vorthan system, the Times Enterprise Asterisk, disguised as a research vessel for 8 months, revealed weapons that fired crystallized antimatter designed to disrupt energy patterns. The Council entity attempting to feed on Vorthan crystal cities found its feeding process interrupted by interference that made absorption impossible. On Nexus Prime, Elena and her team activated the human embassy's true function. It was not a diplomatic facility. It was a fortress designed to protect the galactic capital's population centers. Shield generators that had been hidden in embassy buildings created barriers that Council entities could not penetrate. Ambassador, Kavtor said, watching human technology save thousands of alien lives. How long have you known? Odor, we have always known, Elena replied as she coordinated defensive operations. We are the descendants of species the Council harvested in previous cycles. Earth is not our original world. It is our refuge. She gestured to the displays, showing human ships across the galaxy. Every human you have met, every primitive trader and explorer, they all carry the genetic heritage of civilizations the Council destroyed thousands of years ago. We are what is left of the Yithara, the Kendari, the Voss Collective, and dozens of other species. But your DNA is modified, Elena continued. The architects helped the survivors of harvested civilizations merge their genetic patterns into a form that could survive undetected. What you see as human diversity is actually the preserved genetics of every species the Council has consumed in this galactic region. Admiral Park watched from Earth as the battle reports came in. Human ships across the galaxy were not just fighting the Council entities, they were winning. Weapons designed over centuries of preparation were proving effective. Defensive systems were holding against force that had never been successfully resisted before. "Ma'am," reported her communications officer, "we are receiving signals from non-human ships. They want to know how to help." Jessica smiled. "Signal all galactic defense forces. Transmit our weapon frequencies and defensive patterns. Tell them that if they want to live, they need to fight back now." The galaxy's response was immediate. Ships that had been fleeing the harvest turned around and joined the battle. Weapons designed to work against conventional threats were modified with human-provided frequency data. Civilizations that had accepted their fate for thousands of years suddenly realized they had a choice. The tide of the harvest was turning. For the first time in millions of years of galactic cycles, the Council entities found themselves retreating. Their feeding process was being disrupted across hundreds of systems. The prey species they had carefully managed for millennia were fighting back with knowledge and weapons that should not exist. In the depths of space, the surviving Council entities gathered to assess this unprecedented situation. Their intended harvest was failing. The human contamination had spread resistance throughout the galaxy. They made a decision that would reshape galactic civilization forever. If they could not harvest this cycle, they would destroy it completely and start over. The war was just beginning. The final battle lasted 3 days and changed the galaxy forever. Admiral Jessica Park stood on Earth's command bridge and watched as reports came in from across known space. The Council entities, frustrated by their failure to harvest individual systems, had gathered near the galactic core to attempt a mass extinction event. They were drawing energy from the central black hole, preparing to release a wave that would sterilize every inhabited system simultaneously. "Ma'am," reported Commander Williams, "long-range sensors confirm the Council is charging some kind of superweapon. Estimated power output suggests galaxy-wide destruction." Jessica nodded grimly. They had always known this moment might come. The Architect archives had contained warnings about the Council's final option. If they could not feed, they would destroy everything and wait for new civilizations to evolve. "Signal all human fleets," she ordered. "Execute Operation Liberation." Across the galaxy, hidden human installations that had remained concealed even during the main battle finally revealed themselves. These were not ships or stations. They were massive devices built into asteroids, planets, and even stars themselves. Humanity had spent 3 centuries preparing for this moment. Captain Torres, now commanding the heavy cruiser Times Defiance Asterisk, received his final orders as his ship approached the galactic core. Around him, a fleet of human vessels dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. But these ships were different from the ones that had fought the initial battles. These were the dreadnoughts humanity had built in secret, designed for one purpose only. "All ships," Torres broadcast, "begin the resonance pattern." The human fleet began broadcasting a complex series of energy frequencies. The signals were based on discoveries from the Architect archives, patterns that could disrupt the quantum coherence that held energy beings together. But these patterns required massive coordination across multiple sources to be effective. As the human ships sang their deadly song, other voices joined them. Hidden installations throughout the galaxy added their signals to the resonance pattern. The frequencies that had been designed to disrupt individual Council entities now combined into something far more powerful. On Nexus Prime, Ambassador Elena Vasquez felt the space around the station vibrate with energies that made reality itself seem fragile. Through the observation windows, she could see the council entities that had been attacking the station beginning to flicker and fade. "What is happening?" asked Kavtor, his forearms gripping the railing as the station shook. "Justice," Elena replied. 3 million years of justice. At the galactic core, the massive council entities preparing their extinction weapons suddenly found their own energy patterns being disrupted. The resonance frequencies were tearing apart the quantum structures that allowed them to exist as coherent beings. For entities that had consumed entire civilizations, the experience was terrifying and painful. But something unexpected happened as the council entities began to dissolve. They were not empty energy patterns. Each one contained the absorbed consciousness of every civilization they had harvested. As the resonance frequencies disrupted their outer structures, those trapped minds began to break free. "Admiral," reported the communications officer on Earth, "we are receiving transmissions across all frequencies. Thousands of them. They claim to be representatives of extinct civilizations." Jessica felt hope and horror mix in her chest. "Put them on speakers." The bridge filled with voices speaking in hundreds of languages, many of them long dead. But the translation systems worked, and the messages became clear. "This is Commander Yithka of the Yithara Deep Fleet. We are free. Repeat. We are free. Kendari Collective Node 7. Reporting survival status. The harvest cycle is broken. Voss Unity ship times Eternal Vigilance *, requesting coordination data for counterattack operations. Across the galaxy, the consciousness of every species the Council had harvested over millions of years was being liberated as their captors dissolved. They retained memories, knowledge, and technological data from their original civilizations. And they were angry. The few Council entities that survived the resonance attack found themselves facing not just human ships, but the combined fleets of every civilization they had ever consumed. Yithara vessels materialized from quantum storage dimensions. Kendari collective ships reformed from scattered data patterns. Voss Unity fleets assembled from pure thought energy. The battle at the galactic core became a liberation war spanning geological time. Dr. Sarah Kim, now aboard the research vessel Times Discovery *, watched in amazement as species thought extinct for millions of years returned to physical existence. Her archaeological work had prepared her for many discoveries, but not this. "Sarah," came a familiar voice over the communication system. "This is Director Harrison. I am transmitting from the Architect Fleet, currently approaching your position." "Harrison," Sarah replied. "I thought you were trapped between galaxies." The resonance frequencies opened pathways we had not used in centuries. "The Architect Fleet is returning to normal space. We bring greetings from the other survivor civilizations who escaped the harvest cycles." Sarah looked at her displays showing ships appearing throughout the galaxy. Not just architects, but species that had fled Council predation across millions of years. They had been waiting, watching, preparing for this moment. "How many?" she asked. "Hundreds of civilizations, thousands of ship classes. We have been building the largest refugee fleet in galactic history. Today, we come home." The final Council entities, vastly outnumbered and facing weapons designed specifically to destroy them, made their last stand near the galactic core. But they were no longer fighting just humans, or even just the current galactic civilization. They were fighting the accumulated anger of every species they had harvested across geological time. The battle was brief. 6 months later, Elena Vasquez stood at the podium in the Great Assembly of Nexus Prime. The station had been rebuilt and expanded to accommodate representatives from over 2,000 civilizations, most of them species that had been thought extinct for millennia. "Representatives of the reformed Galactic Assembly," she began, her voice carrying to beings who had seen the rise and fall of entire evolutionary cycles. 6 months ago, our galaxy lived under a lie. We believed we were free citizens of a voluntary confederation. We believed the Apex Council were benevolent guides who had ascended to help us grow. The assembly was silent. In the front rows sat species that remembered the truth from before the Council's reign. Behind them were the younger civilizations that had learned hard lessons about the nature of their supposed protectors. "Today, we know differently," Elena continued. Today, we understand that freedom is not given by those in power. It is taken by those who refuse to be victims. She gestured to the human delegation. Humanity came to this galaxy as refugees, carrying the genetic heritage of a dozen harvested civilizations. We pretended to be primitive because primitives are not threats. We hid our true nature because revelation would have meant extinction. Cav Tor, now representing the Zephyrian worlds in the new government, stood to speak. Ambassador Vasquez, the Assembly recognizes that humanity saved us all. But we must ask, what happens now? How do we build a civilization where this can never happen again? Elena smiled. We build it together. Every species contributes their knowledge. Every civilization shares their technology. We create a galaxy where no one species can dominate others, because we all remember what domination costs. She activated a display showing new star charts. The architect fleets are sharing navigation data for regions beyond our galaxy. Species that wish to explore new frontiers can do so freely. Those who wish to rebuild their ancestral worlds can return home, and those who want to create something entirely new have empty systems to colonize. Dr. Kim, now Director of Galactic Archaeological Services, stood to address the Assembly. We have established memorial archives on every world touched by the harvest cycles. No civilization will be forgotten again. No history will be erased. The vote to establish the reformed Galactic Assembly was unanimous. In the months that followed, the galaxy transformed in ways no one had imagined. Ythara communication networks, enhanced with human defensive protocols, connected every inhabited system. Kandari collective consciousness technology allowed species to share knowledge without losing individual identity. Voss Unity ships became mobile cities where different species could live and work together. Humanity's role in the new galaxy was unique. They became the bridge species, the ones who could communicate with any civilization because they carried genetic memories of so many. Human ships served as neutral ground for diplomatic negotiations. Human technology provided the defensive systems that ensured no future harvest could succeed. Captain Torres, now Admiral Torres, commanded the new Galactic Defense Fleet from his flagship times, Liberation Asterisk. The fleet contained ships from hundreds of species, all equipped with resonance weapons that could disrupt energy-based threats. They patrolled the galaxy's edges, watching for signs of other predator civilizations. Any word from the deep space monitoring stations? He asked his operations officer. The architect long-range sensors have detected energy signatures in neighboring galaxies, came the reply. Patterns similar to what the Council used, but different. The architects believe there may be other harvest cycles operating in distant regions. Torres nodded. Prepare mission briefs for volunteer expeditions. If there are other prey species out there, they deserve to know they have options. In her new role as Secretary General of the Reformed Assembly, Elena often thought about the galaxy's strange transformation. They had gone from a managed farm to a true confederation almost overnight. Species that had been extinct for millions of years were rebuilding their civilizations. Technologies thought lost forever were being recovered and improved. But the most important change was philosophical. Every species in the galaxy now understood that survival required vigilance, cooperation, and the willingness to fight for freedom when necessary. 1 year after liberation, Elena received a message from deep space. It was from a human exploration vessel that had traveled beyond the galactic rim, carrying liberation technology to civilizations in distant galaxies. Secretary General, the message read, "This is Captain Chen aboard the Times New Horizon Asterisk. We have made contact with 17 civilizations in the Andromeda region. All were living under harvest cycles similar to what we experienced. We have shared our resonance technology and historical data. 4 systems have already achieved liberation. Request permission to establish permanent outpost for refugee assistance." 4 systems. Elena approved the request without hesitation. Humanity had learned the galaxy's most important lesson. Freedom was not something you achieved and then protected. It was something you shared with everyone who needed it. As she looked out at the stars from her office on Nexus Prime, Elena smiled. The galaxy had ignored every warning about the harvest cycles. But they had listened when humanity offered hope. Now they were carrying that hope to the stars. In the depths of space, monitoring stations watched for threats that might never come. Memorial archives preserved the stories of civilizations that had refused to be forgotten, and exploration fleets carried the promise that no species would face extinction alone. The galaxy had learned humanity's greatest strength was not superior technology or individual brilliance. It was their absolute refusal to let anyone face darkness without hope of rescue. And that promise now extended far beyond the stars they called home.